Hello, my mystical friends. Step inside the Oracle Parlor. Grab a nice cup of tea and get cozy with me, your host, Fantasma Witch. Let us go on a journey of all things magical, mystical, paranormal, ghostly, psychic, as we discuss both my stories as well as the stories of guests where we can share in this beautiful parlor space our experiences, our beliefs, and our ideas without judgment. Welcome. Cozy up. It's time to sip the magical tea. Hello, my magical, mystical friends. Welcome back to the Oracle Parlor podcast. I hope that you are cozy, maybe in your pajamas with a cup of tea, because today we are talking about dreams. I'm going to be sharing a little bit of my own personal experiences with dream work and my own personal stories. So, before we begin, as always, the following is based off of my personal experiences and my current beliefs. I am not here to convince you that I had these experiences, and I'm not here to convince you to believe what I believe. I'm simply sharing these stories with you. And my beliefs may change from when I've recorded this episode, and that's totally normal. So, like always, as you know, I will do my best to also include my references in the episode description for anyone who's interested. That will include any book recommendations, anything that I mention in regards to references from online. You can find that all in the description of the episode. And of course, if you have your own story that you would like to share and have it read on the podcast, please feel free to send your stories to oracleparlorpod@gmail.com. I would love to share your experiences with your dreams and things that you've experienced, even if that's paranormal, whatever that is, I would love to read it and share it. So let's begin by clarifying first, what is a dream premonition? Because I want to start this episode with talking about dream premonitions rather than lucid dreaming and things of that nature. So, most people, when they hear the word premonition, they think of maybe the show That's So Raven from the Disney Channel, or maybe they think of the movie The Dead Zone. This really depends on how old you are and what kind of media you enjoy. But in both of these pieces of media, when a premonition is visually depicted, it's usually depicted as almost like a clip, a movie clip that plays out in the person's mind's eye, in the psychic's mind. They see this exact movie clip play out, and then that thing that they witnessed in their mind's eye is exactly what ends up happening beat for beat. And that's something that can happen. However, it's not my personal experience when it comes to premonitions. And if it does happen in that way, it is extremely rare. And, premonitions are really interesting because you usually don't know it's a premonition until it happens. You may have a gut feeling when you get a premonition. You may have this weird sensation, a psychic sense of some kind that washes over you. That can absolutely happen. But usually, especially when it comes to dream premonitions, you won't even be aware that the dream that you had was a premonition until it already happened. And then later you look back on it and go, oh, dang. Which is more often than not the experience that I have had. You know, the reason why is because sometimes the imagery in our dreams can be very literal. And sometimes it can be very symbolic. More often than not, our dreams are extremely symbolic. And the same is true for when we have a dream premonition. Our dream premonitions won't always play out like an exact movie clip of what's going to happen beat for beat. A dream premonition won't always be literal visuals, literal signs of, seeing things happen in a very in your face kind of way. It's like any other dream where it may not make sense. It may be kind of off or weird or chaotic, bizarre, but it can still turn out to be a dream premonition much later. And, with repetition, with dream work, and tracking your dreams, your mindful awareness of your dreams, and how you perceive symbolic imagery, the more you do it, the more you actually may start to pick up on subtle differences that could actually be an indicator for you personally on whether or not the dream that you're having could possibly be something more than just a dream. Possibly a premonition, possibly a message, because dreams don't always have to be a premonition in order for it to have deep, significant meaning to us. Now, I personally believe that our dreams are a combination of things. Now, I know some people may be a hard yes, a hard no, black or white, but I like to be somewhere in the gray, especially when it comes to dreams. You have people who believe that dreams are simply our mind sorting through data throughout the day and trying to categorize and process things from both the past as well as the present, and even our concerns of the future. Then, on the opposite side of things, you have people who may believe that dreams always have deep meaning and always have some sort of mystical element to them. And I believe that it can be both, and that both kind of are needed in order for us to fully understand and do dream work. So, if dream work is something that you're really interested in, I invite you to play with both ideas equally. You can have a dream that is deeply meaningful, or even a premonition that is based on things that your mind is sorting through via visual images, via trauma, via life experiences. And our brain takes those experiences and puts them forward in a way that can give us a deeper understanding, which is something I will talk about a little later, because this is something you can incorporate in your dream work. So, with all this understanding of what a dream premonition is, you know, um, I have had my own personal experiences with dream premonitions. And it's important to also say that not all premonitions are going to be deeply meaningful or life-changing. This kind of goes back to the idea of that movie with Christopher Walken that I mentioned, Dead Zone. In Dead Zone, a lot of the premonitions that Christopher Walken's character was having was extremely, deeply life-changing for the people around him. So much so to the point that his character alters the outcome of history, which would have been very grimdark, because he had a premonition about it. Except, again, in my experiences, premonitions don't tend to be that intense or deep and life-changing. Sometimes it's simply like saying, okay, cool. What am I supposed to do with this information? That's okay. It's still fun. It's still magical. It can still fill you with awe and wonder. And the reason why I wanted to say all this before we really got into the dreams and dream premonitions is because if you're someone who listens to this episode and says, oh, this sounds really cool, and I really want to start trying dream work, and I really want to start being more mindful of my own dreams, I don't want you to feel like there's a specific box of, well, a dream premonition has to be important, or a dream premonition has to be literal, or a dream premonition has to be symbolic. It can be everything and none of these things at the same time, because that's just how it is sometimes. It's no clear answer. And again, that's what makes this fun. That's what makes this magical, because I personally have been doing dream interpretation since I was 12 or 13 years old, I think. I've been doing it all my life. And I am still constantly learning and I'm still constantly growing. And there is no exact science to it because dreams are weird. For anyone who here who does remember their dreams, dreams are weird. So, if this is something you want to get into, remember that it's a process. It's never going to be the same twice. It's always going to be different. And you may start seeing patterns. You may start seeing the matrix within your dreams of different structural patterns that your dreams will present you with. But even at that, these structures are so changeable and so flexible. So it's really important that we remain flexible, that we remain open, that we go with the flow, so that way we can allow whatever wants to come through to come through. So, as I mentioned, I've been doing dream work forever. I professionally give dream interpretations. However, um, I used to try to offer those a lot more in person. I don't anymore because a lot of people either don't remember their dreams or don't feel comfortable sharing their dreams, which makes sense because dreams can really show a person their deepest side of themselves. If you know astrology, you know that someone having access to your full birth chart is a lot of information. It is both the brightest side of you and the darkest side, and both are valid, and neither is better than the other. There is no right or wrong within the birth chart, within yourself, within your personality, and the same can be said about our dreams. However, it can show your trauma. It can show those darker, deeper sides of yourself. So I find that um, a lot of people don't often open up about their dreams, but boy, if I overhear somebody talking about like a weird dream that they had, I am front and center. I am there for it. I absolutely love hearing people share their dreams, and I love interpreting dreams. And I've been this way all my life. It's something that has really interested me, both on the psychology side of things as well as the more mystical side of things. And I owned and still own quite a lot of dream interpretation books and even books on dream psychology and lucid dreaming and all of these things. And the reason why this really, really, really interested me as a kid was because dream premonitions and really intense, very vivid visual dreams actually runs in my family on my mom's side of things. In From what I know, mostly the femme folk on the Mexicana side of my mom's family. Now, there could be other family members who just don't talk about it or don't bring awareness to it. I'm not sure, but this seems to be a common thing because I have it, my sister has it, my mom has it, and my abuela and my abuelita has it. And I know this because we all share these stories with each other. And they're all to varying degrees, and we all have different ways of, receiving these things. And so I wanted to share some of those stories and how those really influenced me to get into dream work. So, you know, my abuelita, she she has a couple of dreams that really, really, really inspired me to look more into dream work because she's one of those people who when she had a dream, you listened. When she had a dream, it was one of those more life-changing style dreams. Like I said, it's not always going to be that way, and it can change depending on the person. But my abuelita was definitely someone who had these more deeply meaningful dreams. For example, she had a dream one time where I believe she was at a dance party of some kind, and the whole community was there, and everybody was in these beautiful gowns and outfits. And she saw one of her friends there. She went up to her friend, and her friend turned around and was wearing this gorgeous, deep plummet like neckline that showed a lot of her bare chest. And my grandma went to go hug her in the dream and then noticed that she felt very flat chested. And when my grandma pulled away, this person was extremely flat chested. Now, this femme person that my grandma was friends with, they were not of that body type back when my grandma had this dream. And my grandma took mental note of it and thought, well, that's interesting. And didn't really think anything of it. And because even when I'm saying this dream, it just seems kind of like, okay, well, that's just like random dream logic where somebody's body is, different from what you recognize it to be. But it was very, very much the center of attention of my grandma's dream was the deep neckline and the this person having a very, very flat chest. Now, my grandma talked to this friend not that long after having the dream, and this friend actually was diagnosed with breast cancer, and they actually had to have a mastectomy. And that was the moment that my grandma realized that her dream actually had this premonition meaning to it, where at first it didn't make any sense. It was like, okay, why is my friend wearing this very obvious bare-chested piece of clothing, and why is this person so, built so differently than what I recognized them to be? And that ended up being how her dream was kind of showing her this premonition that she didn't even realize was a premonition until after she talked to this friend. Another instance of my grandma having a very intense dream premonition was that she had a dream that was simply this and nothing else. My grandma was looking at my grandpa, whom she was separated from. They hadn't been married for quite some time, but she was looking at my grandpa and he turned into a pile of ash. And again, it was just kind of like, okay, that's weird. That's very strange. Didn't really think anything of it. And then a couple of weeks or months went by, and my grandpa passed away from lung cancer because he was a chronic smoker. And again, the dream came forward in a way that is not super straightforward. But now that you have the information, you can look back and say, oh my gosh, that absolutely makes sense why the visual imagery presented in such a way. It makes sense why it was him turning into ash. It makes sense why this character, this friend, was wearing this very obvious dress in this very obvious way in my grandma's dream. Because hindsight 2020, when you have the full picture, then you realize that the premonition is there. This is very similar to the dream premonitions that I've had, where there's some truth behind the symbolic images. So, one of the first dream premonitions that I know of, and I say this because typically, in order to really know if you're having a special kind of dream or dream premonition, you really need to be mindfully aware of your dreams. Because more often than not, if it doesn't really stand out to you, you're probably not going to take note of it. So, in the examples of my abuelita, of course, she took note of those dreams because they were extremely visual and very intense and were about people that she knew. So she kind of was taking mental note of when it would happen. But with this dream that I'm about to tell you, for me, it definitely was not anything that felt deeply personal. So, I would say this was a few years ago, um, probably about 4 years ago now, I would say, maybe five, where one night I was having a dream where in my dream, I was at my abuelita's house and I went outside because I heard meowing. And in her front yard, there was a box of kittens and no mama cat to be seen. And I was all excited because I was like, I'm going to rescue these kittens because if you know me, I love rescuing cats and kittens. It is my favorite thing to do. It's my favorite thing to take a spicy kitten and make them super lovey-dovey. And yeah. So when I had this in my dream where I was hearing this meowing and then I saw this box of kittens, I was like, heck yeah, I'm gonna go rescue those kittens. And I went outside and the box tipped over and all the kittens bolted. And there was one specific kitten that didn't quite run off with the rest of the siblings in the box. And I was trying so desperately to catch this kitten, and it kept wiggling away from me, and it kept getting away. And no matter what I did, I couldn't catch the kitten. And I was so incredibly stressed. This dream was so stressful and so anxiety inducing. And all it was me trying to catch this adorable little kitten. And I just couldn't. And no matter what I did, this kitten was constantly eluding me to the point of me in my dream having a complete like anxiety, stress, heartbreak, full on breakdown. To the point that I even woke up um kind of sad and panicked that I couldn't catch this kitten. And when I woke up, I thought I heard meowing. Now, yes, I at the time I had two cats, and the thing was, I had cats, not kittens, and this was a distinct kitten meow. And I laid in bed and I heard it just once. And I thought, okay, my my brain must be playing tricks on me because I just had a dream about kittens. So I wrote that off as I'm still half asleep. That's just me. And it was like the crack of dawn. So I was like, I'm going back to sleep. Next morning, I woke up and I wrote the dream down because I keep a dream journal. If I remember a dream, I write it down. No matter how small and insignificant it may seem, I try to always write the date, the dream, the feelings, so on and so forth. So I wrote it down and left it at that. And I forgot that I had the dream because you probably have had this experience, listener, where you wake up and if you don't consciously think about the dream, you'll forget it. Well, sometimes it happens the same way, even if you keep a dream journal. There are some times where I will write down a dream in my dream journal, and like 2 days later, I'll look at that dream that I wrote down and I won't. It's like, who wrote this? Like, I don't even remember what the dream was about, but because I wrote it immediately upon waking up, it's like, okay, well, I guess I had that dream at some point. So that's what happened in this situation. I wrote down this dream that I had, and like a day or two later, I wasn't even thinking about it, consciously aware of it. Now, some days went by, and we had a friend who lived in the neighboring apartment complex to us, and there was an alley in between our two apartment complexes. And this neighbor said, "Oh man, we saw that there's a kitten." And I said, "No way, where's this kitten?" Again, I had completely forgotten about my dream. And they said, "Well, the kitten's hanging out in the alley." And I said, "Okay, well, I'm going to get a cat trap and I'm going to try to catch this kitten and make sure that the kitten gets what they need." And then sure as heck, later that night, we heard a kitten crying all night long. And it was just one single kitten, no other kittens. I tried for days to catch this kitten with absolute crap luck. Like it was devastating how ridiculous this was. I would get the kitten in a certain area and then something would happen and it would just happen to escape. I went into the neighboring apartment complex yard, which was an open area yard. It was open to the public to walk through. And again, my friend lived there, and I had a neighbor get mad at me for trying to catch a kitten and literally scold me. So much so that I was crying over not being able to catch this kitten and feeling like nobody was helping me and that everything was against me. And so I petitioned some spirits and I asked for help. And on July 4th of that year, I miraculously caught the kitten. After many other run-ins with other very rude, very mean people in the neighborhood who thought I was a complete idiot for wanting to rescue this kitten who was barely even a month old, 2 months old. And so I was so excited. I caught the kitten. I brought the kitten in, and I even found the kitten a home. And that kitten is still in their loving forever home. Now, after I had found the kitten their forever home, this was like maybe a month or two later. I was flipping through my dream journal just because every now and then, as someone who does dream work, it's good to go back and read your old journal entries, to actively go through and read and see, is there anything here that stands out to me? Is there any guidance? Is there any message? Is there any, well, sure enough, I was flipping through my dream journal and I came across the entry about trying to catch a kitten that I could not catch, that eluded me, that was stressing me out and making me panicked. And that dream, the date on that dream was literally a day or two before I found out about the kitten in the alley. And I realized that that was in its own way a dream premonition about trying to catch this kitten and failing miserably for quite some time. But I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't written down that dream journal. And I wouldn't have realized it was a premonition if I wasn't mindfully looking back on these things. And that's why I really wanted to make that point at the beginning of this episode that oftentimes we don't even know. We don't even know we're having a dream premonition. And it can seem so simple. Another dream premonition that I had back at this same apartment complex was I had had a dream where the only thing that happened in this dream was my partner and I were standing outside of our apartment complex looking up at the telephone wires, and there was a hawk, a very specific kind of hawk in our area that is pretty common for like Southern California area. But it was sitting on the telephone wires and it was looking at me and my partner, and its mouth was open like it was panting. And my partner said, "Hey," in my dream, "Hey, look at that hawk. It looks like the hawk is like really intentionally staring at us." And I remember my partner saying this in the dream and being like, "Okay, yeah." I was like, "Yeah, I guess it kind of does look like it's trying to say something or do something. I don't know." And it was just like the overall feeling from this dream of this hawk staring at us was like as if the hawk was trying to connect in some way. I don't know how else to describe it, but it felt very meaningful. And this is one of those moments where when I woke up from the dream, I thought it was really interesting that the dream felt so important, even though there was nothing really to it. So in my dream journal, I kind of, you know, starred that page. I put a little asterisk next to it as keep an eye on this. And I think it may have been the same day after I woke up from that dream, if not the following day. Um, Me and my partner were sitting on the couch watching Turning Red as it had just come out for streaming. And as we were watching the movie, it was uh pretty warm out. So we had the windows open and the door was open with the screen door so we could get some airflow. And we kept hearing this loud bang, bang, just intermittent random bangs. And at first we were pretty annoyed because what it sounded like was someone in the apartment complex directly across from us doing some sort of construction of some kind, but it was really bizarre because it wasn't like a hammer where it would be bang, 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 bang. It was just random bang. And we even heard people yelling. So we were like, well, maybe somebody's getting into an argument. And then I glanced out our front window. Now, this apartment complex, the front windows were facing the windows of the adjacent apartment complex because there was only like a walkway between the two. And I glanced out the window to be like, what is going on? And I see in the window for the stairwell this giant hawk slam against the glass. And then I realized the sound that we had been hearing was the sound of this hawk trying to escape. What had happened was the way that this apartment complex is set up is the downstairs apartment complex is open. There's a walkway that you go into, and then it goes upstairs. But there's no like door to close off the inside from the outside. It's just walkway, stairs, and then there's upstairs apartments that is enclosed by a window. This hawk, we think, was trying to get lunch, possibly the mourning doves that lived right by the entryway. And when it tried to fly away, it flew up into the walkway and could not escape. And so it was slamming itself, this poor thing was slamming itself against the window trying to escape. So we kind of told the neighbors because they were going to open their door to go see what was going on. And we told them, keep your doors closed. There's a hawk in your hallway. And my partner grabbed a towel and went upstairs, and this poor hawk had completely exhausted itself trying to escape through the window, that it was sitting in the corner, panting, staring at my partner. So my partner put the towel over this hawk, gently picked it up, and walked outside. And the hawk kind of wiggled its head out of the towel and stared at my partner the entire time my partner walked down the stairs and went outside. And then gently pulled the towel off, and the hawk flew up to the top of our apartment complex and sat there with its mouth open, panting, staring at me and my partner. And it was in that moment when I saw the hawk sitting on top of the roof that I immediately realized that the dream that I had of this hawk was one to one what I was seeing of this hawk in the moment. Now, it wasn't sitting on telephone wires, but it was sitting on the roof. But the face, the type of hawk, the panting, the open mouth, it was all exact. The way that it was staring at us, it was all exactly the same. And that it was staring at us so intently before it flew off. And because I had just had that dream and I had just written it down, it wasn't until that exact moment of that hawk staring at us that I realized, oh my gosh, I dreamt about this. Slightly different, but I dreamt about this. So, as you can see from these dream premonitions that I had, there it's one of those situations of like, okay, how is this how does this help me? What is the point of it, you know? But again, it's all about having fun. It's all about just saying, well, that was a cool experience. That was weird. That's fun. Doesn't have to be anything more than just a weird, fun experience. It can just be kind of bizarre. And there was one other dream that I had, and because I've been doing dream work and because I have been journaling about my dreams and have become even more aware of when something may be a premonition, I realized, and you'll see in this next story too, that all of my dreams have to do with rescuing animals. So even though to me it may not seem important, it does change the life of the animal. Even if that dream didn't lead me to the animal, it's almost like the dream is an initiation, a preparation for the possibility of this thing to occur so that I'm already mentally and emotionally in the headspace of how to come at that, how to move forward and assist and rescue that animal. So this next one isn't me directly doing any kind of rescuing. However, it is very interesting because it's still within that same kind of realm. I had a dream not that long ago, actually, a couple months ago, where in the dream, I was at my abuelita's place and I was talking with my sister and we were having a conversation and suddenly I heard itty bitty tiny meowing. The tiniest meowing, like fresh newborn kitten meowing. And I told my sister, stop, 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 stop talking. Cat lady mode, activate. Stop talking. And I was like, there's kittens outside. And in my dream, I go into my grandma's backyard and I start digging through everything and I start finding these fresh newborn baby kittens. And I start collecting them up. And I told my sister, we have to find the mother cat because they're too young. They're too young. We got to find the mom. And that was the entirety of the dream. It wasn't about me rescuing the kittens as much as it was about finding the mom, which is really interesting. Flash forward a couple months after this dream, and I get a text out of the blue from my sister of a photo of my abuelita's backyard. And in the backyard is a litter of kittens playing with the mom watching over them. And later, my sister told me after a few weeks that the kittens had kind of gone missing. And then recently, as of like 2 days ago, she sent me another image where the kittens returned and the mom was watching over them. And my sister, as well as some people in the area, were putting out kitten food to make sure that the kittens were getting the food and the fats they needed, as well as the mom. And so, even though I have no direct hands-on contact with the situation, again, it was another dream of animals in a specific location, eating specific things. And even though I have no sway in this at all, it was still really weird that it's like, here again, I'm having dreams about kittens in this way. But again, it doesn't mean that I have, just because we have these psychic moments, doesn't mean we have to actively do something and engage with it and take action. Sometimes it's just meant to be like, this is a thing. That's all. Here it is. Bye. And nothing more. And we're just meant to experience it and be in the moment and recognize, oh, that was something more than just a simple dream. Another common occurrence for me personally, and this really fed into my desire to get into dream work when I was much younger, was because even though when I was much younger, I wasn't having dream premonitions and my abuelita was, I was having very intense, very vivid dreams. And I was lucid dreaming quite a lot. And I would even have dreams where I started to realize I was projecting into the astral. So that's a lot. So, for anyone who's unaware of what lucid dreaming is when we become consciously aware that we are in a dream, thus giving us a brief window of controlled awareness. Now, sometimes lucidity simply happens. Sometimes it's triggered in some way. And other times, people train themselves. Now, if you've seen the movie Inception, you may kind of have an idea of lucid dreaming and what it means to lucid dream and what it means to train yourself to go into a dream and then become lucid in order to do things in an environment that does not quite make sense. And lucid dreaming, you may be thinking, okay, that sounds like a lot of fun because then you could literally go into a dream and fly around and do whatever you want. But lucid dreaming is actually really, really, really good for doing shadow work. It's also really good if you're someone who's got chronic nightmares, like myself, which may be surprising to hear that someone who has chronic nightmares does dream work, because not all the time are my dreams fun. And that is where we come back to kind of what I was talking about earlier about dreams can present trauma in really different ways. One of the great things about being a lucid dreamer is I have had it happen where I would have nightmares. And most people, I feel like, have this happen where if they're in the middle of a nightmare, sometimes they realize that they're having a nightmare and they can force themselves to wake up. And that's a common thing that I've been able to do since I was a kid, is becoming very aware that I was in a nightmare and then having different ways of waking myself up. Well, when I started to really get serious about dream work, I was experimenting with different ways to lucid dream. And one time I was having one of these nightmares. And one of the common occurrences of my nightmares, and this is, again, this is very revealing, is being hunted. I would have a lot of nightmares of being hunted in different scenarios, in different ways, being stalked and hunted by usually a man who was trying to kill me. That was usually my PTSD nightmare. And so one time I was in this nightmare where I realized I was about to be hunted by this man, and I became very aware that I was having a dream. And I stood up in my dream and I said, in this nightmare, and I said, "No, I don't think so." And I snapped my fingers and everything froze. And I said, I think I'm going to dream of something fun instead of this nightmare. And so I set the intention that there was a ladder and a ladder appeared, and I literally climbed this ladder, exited the nightmare, and flew off. And then once I flew off, I fell back into dream space, and I don't remember what else happened from there. I just was able to actively engage lucidity in a way to leave the dream. Now, that's really fun because yes, it's a way to like actively leave a dream. But when I'm talking about being able to do shadow work, what I mean is being able to confront those things, which can be very, very scary, which is something that I did once, and the results were pretty amazing. So, as I mentioned, one of my PTSD dreams is of being hunted by a man who's trying to kill me. And in this instance that I just shared, I just left. I was like, I'm not going to deal with this. But I had been thinking a lot during this time period about these reoccurring dreams that I've had for quite a long time. And one of the books that I read on dreaming and lucid dreaming, which again, I'll include in the description of this episode, one of the things that I had read was that there was a story of this person who had a reoccurring nightmare of this dragon-like beast that was breathing fire and smoke and always hunting them and attacking them, that they built up lucidity and they finally, in one of these recurring nightmares, turned to the dragon and asked what the name of the dragon was, why this dragon existed, what it represented. And the dragon answered and said, "I am your smoking addiction. I am your inability to put the cigarette down. I am the thing that is going to kill you. Like I am the fear of not being able to quit." And when the person was told this by this dream monster that they were facing, they told it, "I'm done smoking. You're not allowed to stalk me anymore in my nightmares. I'm going to officially quit." They faced this thing that this monster had been created in their own mind. And when they did that, they found that it was much easier for them to quit smoking. I'm not saying it cured them. I'm not saying that this is a cure-all for everybody, but for them, the fear of not being able to quit, the fear of being so stuck in chain smoking that they would die was reduced by being able to bring awareness to it through their dreamscape, through their projected subconscious fears around those things. And I had read that in this book, and I was like, oh my gosh, I need to face the man in my nightmares. I need to face the man in my nightmares. I want to see what happens if I face the man in my nightmares. And so obviously, lucid dreaming is not something that one can easily control at the snap of their fingers. Some people claim that they can, and maybe they've worked really, really, really hard to do a lot of work in order to get to that point. I have found that no matter how much work I've done personally, being able to always become lucid at any given moment, it's not something I can do personally. So there's just sort of this wait until it becomes lucid. Wait until it becomes lucid when it comes to how I dream. And so one time I was having this reoccurring nightmare, except for it was slightly different, like always. And the difference was, as I was hiding from this man who was trying to kill me, I became lucid. And I went, oh my God, I'm dreaming about the man hunting me. I said, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna tell this man off. I'm gonna do it. I'm lucid. And so I knew that the man was hiding, or not hiding, but he was in the garage and he was going to enter the house into the area that I was in to kill me. And so I even though I knew it was a nightmare, even though I knew I was very conscious that I was dreaming, I was still scared to face this man. And I opened up the door to the garage just a crack. And I said, "Excuse me." And he kind of turned to face me. And I said, "You're not allowed to be here. You can't enter this home. You have to leave. You can't be here." And the guy just looked at me, nodded, and I kid you not, picked up a suitcase, like a briefcase, and then just walked out the garage and left. And that was it. And then I woke up. I wasn't scared. The feeling that I got from this guy when I told him, "You can't be here, you have to go, like leave me alone," was just like that silent nod that he gave me, and the ridiculousness that my brain was like, he's also gonna pick up a briefcase and a hat and walk out the door. Like how a stereotypical, ridiculous imagery. Just it was just this silent understanding of like, I understand. Absolutely. You're in charge. That was the feeling I got. And I've not had another nightmare of being hunted and stalked by a man since. This was a reoccurring nightmare for me that I have had since I was a child. This being hunted. I have not had those nightmares since this moment of lucidity, which happened a couple years ago, I want to say. And they're no longer a reoccurring nightmare for me. And when I say reoccurring nightmare, I mean I would have them many times a year. And for almost 2 years now, I've not had that at all. I would look back through my dream journals because I have like two or three that I've kept. And so many of those was this reoccurring nightmare of being hunted by an unknown man and trying to hide and survive. And at a certain point, there's that journal entry of me being lucid and telling him, "You have to leave." And I have not had those nightmares since. And this is why it can be a really useful tool, not just for the magical, but for the mundane. If you want to call healing mundane, it's not. It's also magical. But our dreams are powerful. Our subconscious mind is powerful, whether it's something magical in regards to having premonitions, or it's, simply things that we're currently processing. And this is why I said dreams are both ends of this spectrum of being magical and our brains processing things. It is that in-between reality of being able to do this shadow work, being able to do this healing and deep processing on this interesting plane of existence. Which leads me to the last point here, which I had mentioned, the astral plane. Now, I'm not going to get too much into this, but the astral plane, for anyone who may not be aware, is defined by dictionary.com as a non-physical level or realm of being separate from the physical one, but accessible from it by means of one's astral body or through by people with psychic powers. It's believed to be inhabited by angels and other non-physical beings, including the souls of people who have died or have yet to be born. So this is dictionary.com's kind of idea of what the astral plane is. And I believe that the astral plane definitely is this kind of parallel plane to ours that we can't quite see, that different entities and spirits and beings can absolutely exist in, and that we can consciously through astral projection and meditation go into the astral realm and journey. But I absolutely believe that sometimes we can slip into that through dreams, which is something that I've had happen quite a lot. And through doing all the dream work that I do, I realized that there are certain signs for me personally of when I have projected into the astral. And it's not a it's not a constant thing because if I constantly was projecting into the astral through my dreams, it would be absolutely exhausting. It would be draining. Um, but there are certain things, like I said, that I noticed that when I'm having a dream, just like when I have dreams that feel like they're deeply meaningful and have some sort of significant message or guidance for me, they kind of have a different feeling. Just like how dream premonitions, every now and then, it's like, there's an odd feeling here. Um, the astral has visual cues for me personally that stand out, such as extremely clear images, extremely vibrant colors, people in my dream having their own consciousness and opinions and thoughts that aren't like if I were to describe it for me personally, when I'm in a dream, it feels like I'm watching a movie, that I'm playing a video game, that I'm just a character in the game, and I'm not actively engaging with anyone. But when it's more of me in the astral, it's more like these are people, these are entities, these are separate beings. And it's very, very, like I said, vibrant and very clear and has a completely different feeling. And usually, when I have dreams that I believe are me projecting into the astral, those are the ones where when I wake up in the morning, it feels like I didn't get any sleep. It feels like I'm completely exhausted. And it's not the kind of like, oh, I didn't get good sleep. No, it feels like I ran a marathon. Because what I believe is happening is when I'm projecting out into the astral, it's still taking a lot of energy and a lot of focus. And so I'm not actually resting. I'm still doing things. So it's a different entity altogether, I want to say. And I don't want to get too much into my own astral dreams because those are very, very personal, but they are very interesting and bizarre. And if that's something you're interested in, you don't have to wait for a dream in order to travel to the astral. And that's a whole other episode and a whole other class that I could go into my ideas and what I've read and other people's experiences when it comes to the astral. Now, you may be wondering, because I haven't talked about it, spirits interacting through our dreams. Now, I'm saving that for another episode. So if you're interested, definitely, if you're not already subscribed to the podcast, what are you doing here? What are you doing? Go subscribe. Make sure that you're following along because I definitely want to talk on how spirits can engage with us after they have passed, after people have passed, or loved ones have passed, pets have passed. And one of those ways is through dreams. And I do have stories on that, but I want to save that for that episode. So we will talk about that another time. Lastly, I want to say that I have had dreams about things that are currently happening in today's world, in politics, in movements. I've had premonitions about court cases that were really deeply meaningful and impactful and upsetting. I've had premonitions of all these different kinds of things that have happened many years ago that I can go into my dream journal and I can pinpoint those exact things. However, I don't like sharing those stories. I don't publicly talk about those. I don't go into the details of these things because, in my personal belief and opinion, not everybody's going to agree with this, and that's okay because this is my own values, my own beliefs, my own judgments. But I don't like talking about those predictions, about those major things, because I feel it detracts from the current very real world issues. And I don't want to take any kind of attention away from the matters that are important. There is no point for me to stand up and say, well, I predicted this. I had a dream about this years ago and I knew it was going to happen. Because to me personally, that feels really gross. And this, again, this is my own personal judgment and values and morals. And other people don't agree with this because I've seen a lot of other psychics do this online. And if that's what they want to do, that's fine. I don't agree with it. And they don't have to agree with me. But it just doesn't feel right to me because it's almost like using tragedy, using other people's pain or suffering to publicly validate your psychic abilities to other people. And to me, I just simply don't agree with that. I don't need other people's validations for the predictions that I've had, nor do I want to, like I said, take away from what's currently happening, where the energy and attention should be. It shouldn't be on me. It should be on these issues at hand, these very real things that need to be addressed, that the public should be focused on, not like, I predicted that. I knew that was coming. See, here's the proof in my dream journal from like years ago. To quote Stevie Nicks, I keep my visions to myself. So I may be sharing all the fun, cute ones with you about animals, which tends to be like the majority of the things that I've, experienced. But I'm not going to share these big predictions because one thing is, like I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, sometimes premonitions, you don't know they were a premonition until they've happened. Thank you so much for listening to my ramble on dreams today. If you enjoyed listening to this episode, please make sure to leave a review, leave it some stars. It really helps the podcast be heard and seen by others. If you would like to support the podcast, please consider joining my Patreon. You can do just $1 a month, or you can subscribe to the higher tiers of my Patreon, which gives you access to things like the monthly magical workshops, an online community Discord, as well as much more. It supports me in all that I do, so I can keep doing this for you. Remember that you can always send in your own experiences with the paranormal or the topic at hand today on dreams to possibly have it read on the podcast. Simply email your story to oracleparlorpod@gmail.com. And of course, if you're interested in a reading or consultation, you can book a session with me at phantasmawitch.com. Thank you all so much again for joining me today. I will see you next time in the parlor. Thank you for joining me on this magical, mystical journey within the Oracle Parlor. It has been such a pleasure to have you, and please, if you have questions or a spooky story that you would like to share with the podcast, email oracleparlorpod@gmail.com. If you would like to learn more from me, Fantasma Witch, head over to my Patreon. There are free memberships as well as paid memberships where you can get access to monthly magical workshops, Q&A, behind the scenes, and so much more. Don't forget, you can also book a reading directly with me, whether that's tarot, palm reading, pet communication, or even mystical intuitive consultations. You can find all that and more on my website, phantasmawitch.com. That's FANTASMAWITCH.com. You can also find me on Instagram at Fantasma Witch, as well as TikTok at Fantasma Witch. And if you aren't listening to this on YouTube, you can also find me there at Fantasma Witch. If you enjoyed the podcast, please, please, please make sure you leave a rating, share it with people you know. It really helps out. Thank you again, and I will see you witches in the next episode.